Back in November, we found what we thought was the smoking gun, confirming that the pale man in the D4 trailer was Rothma. But it seems Blizzard is telling us that this character's name is in fact Magnus. Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include an update on Cyberpunk 2077's release date and DLC, Blizzard's official message about BlizzCon 2020, some new Diablo 4 conspiracy theories, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the video description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. And just a quick note that we have opened up a merch shop on Teespring, link below. In our first story, an update on E3 2020. We previously reported that the event has been cancelled. Following this, there was speculation about whether there would be an online version of the event. Well, an E3 representative has updated PC Gamer with the following quote: "We will not be presenting an online E3 2020 event in June. Instead, we will be working with exhibitors to promote and showcase individual company announcements, including on our website in the coming months. We look forward to bringing our industry and community together in 2021 to present a reimagined E3 that will highlight new offerings and thrill our audiences." Now, my question here is, given that some big exhibitors were already backing out of E3 and just doing their own presentations, if more of these big exhibitors are now being encouraged to do so for this year, will they see the benefit of doing so and not return to E3 in 2021? Thus making the show one that only has smaller companies and trigger a cascade of failure that ultimately results in the downfall of E3. Probably not. I'm sure it'll be fine. On to some Final Fantasy VII Remake news. The game has launched on PS4 and is generally getting excellent reviews with one caveat. Now, I haven't played the game myself, but I have read about it, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone, so my question to those of you who have played the remake, what do you think of the thing that I can't talk about? Sound off vaguely and without spoilers in the comments. On to some Resident Evil news. According to industry insider Dusk Golem and verified by Video Games Chronicle, Resident Evil 8 will release in 2021 with some serious series departures. Dusk Golem stated, quote, "Okay, so the little game is done. This will be breaking this month with more details later, not by myself, but I've needed to clear some stuff up. Resident Evil 2021 is Resident Evil 8. But it wasn't always Resident Evil 8. During most of its development, it existed as Revelations 3. So as I've said, it's a cross-gen game. Should be revealed within the next few months. It is first person, and many purists are going to hate it because it's taking some serious departures in the story and enemies and the like. Hallucinations, occultism, insanity, and not being able to trust others are huge thematics of the game. The rest I'll leave to be revealed later this month. Most who played the game near finished as Revelations 3 think it's terrific. It'll probably be a high quality game. So assuming this is all true, what are your thoughts on this? If you're a Resident Evil fan, are you happy to hear about these major departures? Because while I'm not an expert in Resident Evil, my understanding is that throughout the series, we do tend to see departures from one game to another. It feels like the devs in the series do shake things up now and then. So isn't this just par for the course? Onto some Google Stadia news. As reported by PC Gamer, Stadia Pro is going free for everyone for 2 months. New and existing users in 14 countries will have access to the 2 free months, and anyone can sign up. Stadia Pro normally costs $10 a month and provides access to 9 games: Destiny 2, Grid, Guilt, Metro Exodus, SteamWorld Dig 2, SteamWorld Quest Hand of the Gilgamesh, Thumper, the Serious Sam Collection, Spitlings, and Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. And perhaps the most important thing to note here is that you can try out the 2 free months without any commitment. You can cancel before you're charged anything. So if you're looking to try out Stadia at no cost and no consequence, now's a good time to do so. On to some CD Projekt Red news, starting with The Witcher 3. As reported by Spiel Times, The Witcher 3 sold more copies on PC than all console platforms combined in 2019. 53% of The Witcher 3's total sales were for PC, with 26% being for PS4 and even less for the other consoles. 82% of those sales were digital. Now compare this to 2015, when most sales were on PS4. 48% of total copies were sold on that console. This figure went down until 2017 when PC has been the dominant sales platform for The Witcher 3. Now, one thing that's important to note is that The Witcher 3 on PC has no DRM. In the past, publishers would dump on the PC platform, citing piracy as a major source of lost revenue. And for a while, the industry heavily favored launching on console, with PC being an afterthought if given any consideration whatsoever. So The Witcher 3 is a shining example of a game with no DRM that people could pirate all they want, still selling exceptionally well on PC. On to some Cyberpunk 2077 news. CD Projekt Red held an investors meeting in Polish this week, and in it we learned a couple things, as translated by Video Games Chronicle. First off, we learned that Cyberpunk 2077 will have no less DLC than The Witcher 3 had. And to put that into concrete terms, The Witcher 3 had 2 full story expansions and 16 DLC packs, which basically equates to 2 whole extra games worth of content. We also learned that despite everything going on in the world, the release plans for Cyberpunk 2077 have not changed. Everything is still on track to release September 17th. The game is apparently now in its complete form. All that's left is polishing. That is to say, from now until September, no content is being added to the game. Just a significant buffer period to make sure that the game is in tip-top shape for release. In a quick Wolcen update, another patch has released this week, fixing various client and server crashes, other bug fixes, and adding some endgame versions of unique armor. The game has been quietly trucking along now for a while, and I look forward to when they're going to start their seasons in maybe 2-3 months at this point. And lastly, onto some Blizzard and Diablo news, starting off with Blizzard and Blizzcon 2020. With a number of other conventions being cancelled this year, there were big question marks surrounding whether Blizzcon 2020 would happen. While typically Blizzcon 2020 happens in the fall, it does cram tens of thousands of people in a rather small space. So even if lockdowns are over by then, will there still be ongoing health precautions taken for massive events? Well, we've now gotten official word on whether Blizzcon 2020 will be happening or not this year, and the answer is maybe? In a message to fans, Sarah Lynn Smith, executive producer of BlizzCon, stated, "While we're all hopeful things will look better later in the year, the bottom line is that at this point it's too early to know whether BlizzCon 2020 will be feasible. The health of our community, employees, and everyone who helps with the show is our top consideration. It might be a few months before we know for certain if or how we'll proceed, but as soon as we have a meaningful update, we'll share it." We do want to mention that prior to the recent events, we had been actively working to finalize our plans, and in fact are still doing so. That includes considering a range of scenarios and possibilities, not just in terms of the show, but also regarding what the experience would be for you. We know BlizzCon also involves preparation on your part, so we'll do our best to provide as much clarity as we can, as quickly as we can. Now, what she's referring to there at the end is that a lot of people are booking hotels long in advance to get the best prices, the best locations. There's of course the need to prepare to actually get a ticket, so I would personally expect by May to have some final word on what's going to happen with BlizzCon, but I think the fact that they are still continuing to plan the event as though it will be happening suggests to me that they probably have a fallback plan of making it a purely online virtual experience, at the very least. My takeaway from this message is not it's unlikely BlizzCon will happen at all, but more so it's likely BlizzCon will happen in some different online way. But of course, we'll only know for sure when we get that next update. Next, I'd like to point to a Reddit post by Redditor username SucksRooster, who reminded us that this piece of Diablo 4 artwork exists and speculated as to whether or not what we're seeing there is the Paladin class depicted. We clearly see what appears to be a knight with a plumed helm and a shield, a sword and board warrior, and that calls back to the video that I posted last week speculating on the potential 2 classes that have not yet been revealed for Diablo 4. I encourage you to check out that video if you have not. We fully analyze the archetypes of classes throughout Diablo history, and a sword and board type class is certainly something that is currently missing and therefore might be one of the missing classes. Now, while in the artwork we might be seeing a concept of a paladin class or a knight class, it's equally possible that this is simply thematic artwork and is not necessarily even depicting a playable character. Next, I'd like to direct you to an amazing fan-made assassin concept by artist Jonathan Lee. I'll have a link to this in the video description for you to check out yourself, but his artwork depicts what an assassin class might look like if introduced to Diablo 4. Now last, I'd like to finish up by discussing the topic of the pale figure in the Diablo 4 opening cinematic. Back in November, someone had found that if you downloaded this cinematic file from the Blizzard website and you opened it in video editing software and looked for what amounts to metadata, editing footnotes, you can see that there are editor's notes that refer to this pale figure as Rathma. Now before that, I did not believe the theories that suggested that this pale figure was Rathma. I felt that there was a very weak lore link that explained him being Rathma, and in fact more lore reasons that it would not be Rathma. But after seeing that myself, the editor note calling him Rathma, well, there's only so many explanations as to why that editor's note is in there. Either it is Rathma, or the cinematic was made by people who didn't actually know the story and just called him Rathma out of their own guess, or at some point this man was intended to be Rathma, but then they decided that it no longer fit the story, and so they changed it, but that note was left in from an older story concept. Regardless, it's been brought to my attention that if you watch that trailer on YouTube, on the official Diablo channel, with closed captionings on, those closed captions refer to most of the characters we see by generic descriptive terms, as you would expect from closed captions, whose job is to clarify to the audience who is speaking. Swordsman, priest, rogue, all the terms are descriptive and give you a quick idea of who is speaking until the pale man speaks, and then we see Magnus. This is the only character referred to by a name, or arguably it could be maybe a title, but whether it's a name or a title, it does not help provide any clarity to the viewer. It should say cultist, or it should say pale man, or necromancer, anything else that is a descriptive term that would fit more with the other descriptive terms. Therefore, it was a deliberate choice by Blizzard to put Magnus there to get us talking. Now, as of at least January, people had noticed that this was the case, but my question is, for how long exactly have these closed captions said Magnus? Because again, it was in late November that the metadata said Rathma. So my question is, did the caption say Magnus from before or after it became widely known that the metadata said Rathma? Because one way or another, Blizzard deliberately chose to call him Magnus to get us talking. Now, are they doing that as a misdirect to make us think that it's not Rathma in order to salvage some kind of plot twist for the audience where we're gonna be like, whoa, that's Rathma? Or is it because this actually is not Rathma? Sound off in the comments with your thoughts, because that's gonna wrap up this video. But again, do be sure to have checked out our video speculating about what the other two unrevealed classes for Diablo 4 may be. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.